All right, Andy, I've had you on for a little while, right? But there's one specific story that like the whole reason we connected was for this story. And this is deep. Like this story, like I know a piece of it, which I'm excited to hear the fine details of it. But while you were over in Iraq and Afghanistan in that area, you have a very memorable or favorite rescue that was it was coordinated of an emergency evacuation of your former interpreter from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And this is like I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to start anything. I want you to bring it, but this is this is wild because you're talking about like going in, search and rescue the guy that was helping the US out in any way, shape, and form to interpret and help our US troops.
Yeah. So to backtrack a little bit, 2012, I get deployed to Afghanistan on part of what was called an SFAT. It was a Security Forces Assist and Advise Team. So about 12 U.S. service members, a bunch of different disciplines, intel, comms, fires, maneuver, right? Everybody kind of had their own lane. And we were attached to an Afghan National Army battalion. Consisted about, I want to say 400, 500 Afghan Army folks. And the job was exactly what's in the title, assist and advise, right? Helping these guys out on their missions, kind of being the go-between between them and our parent battalion, and almost like liaison work, right? And then calling in for support, whatever they needed, medevac, fires, ISR, so like UAVs and different type of intel collection as well. It was great, man. I love that deployment. I love that job. It was pretty wild. This was in 2012, so Afghanistan's kind of going off again. And we were in an area called Maiwan Province, which is home of the Taliban. And for if you require interpreter services, depending on what you're doing, you're either going to get an interpreter that's a local national from the country. But if you're doing more intel related work, usually that interpreter has to be either like a U.S. service member, a crypto linguist, or some type of U.S. citizen for the clearance levels, right? But for what we were doing, we didn't require that. So all of our interpreters were local national Afghans, and these folks that volunteered to be interpreters, part of it, they did it for the job, right? For the money. But they wouldn't have supported us if they weren't unhappy with the way things were going in their country.
Yeah.
And also by doing so, they obviously put themselves at risk, right? Anybody working with U.S. forces in the eyes of the Taliban is public enemy number one. And so,
because they are literally helping their enemy get intel on them.
Yeah.
I mean, you flip it, you're thinking the same thing. It's a spy for the opposite the opposite side. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought here. So another part of the incentive was usually by working with the U.S. military and in that capacity, you would become eligible for a special issue visa or an SIV. And so in a way, it was a potential ticket to the United States for a better life for them, for their families. And I mean, what an ideal method for finding, good potential folks to bring over. They speak English, they speak our language, otherwise they wouldn't be interpreting for us.
Right.
They've had some type of background check in order to get the job of working with us, and it's a good incentive. These folks they obviously weren't happy with the cultural and aspects of that country and the different things the Taliban were trying to implement. And so that was kind of the driving force for a lot of these guys. And keep in mind that they're side by side with us every day. So we're getting shot at, they're getting shot at. We're getting blown up, they're getting blown up. We're getting mortared, they're right there. These guys are in our vehicles. They're at our key leader engagements. We relied heavily on them. And so one of our interpreters was Khan. Khan was from Kandahar. He primarily spoke Pashtun. He spoke a little bit of Dari. A lot of our Afghan National Army folks spoke Dari because they came from northern Afghanistan. Okay. And I think they intentionally put Afghan Army members that were from the north, stationed them down south and vice versa, so that they couldn't just like walk off post and go home, it kind of created some separation. But Khan was there with us throughout the whole thing, man. And super sweet guy, very, very kind of soft spoken, but worked hard. Eventually, I think we ended up having to send him back to the main base just because we didn't have a lot of need for Pashtun translation. But in my mind, he did the work. He continued to work as an interpreter for a couple other teams after that. And so that was 2012. I think we came back 2013 sometime. And myself and another guy on my team, Mike Lazo, through the years after that deployment, had been working with him on his SIV application, writing memos for him. And man, it's just like any other bureaucratic process. It would start to move forward a little bit, and then they deny for some ridiculous reason, right? So another memo, another letter, and this goes on, dude, for we left in 2013. We're talking 7-8 years, longer, because he never officially got his SIV until he had actually made it to the States, which is kind of where the story's going. So we're continuing to try to help Khan get his visa, and then everything starts to boil up about our withdrawal from Afghanistan. And so we kind of turn it up a little bit. I'm hitting up the State Department and be like, hey, what's the status? What's going on? Here's his SIV number. Like, we're getting ready to pull out, man. Like, we need to get some traction on this for this guy. But no change. And then we actually start, we hit August of 21, and we actually start the withdrawal. And that's when I start getting the panic text and phone calls from Khan. And as we got closer towards the end of the month, when things started getting real bad, that's when he called me one day. He's like, sir, if I don't get out of here, they're going to kill me and my family. They're going to kill me for sure. And man, it was hard to hear. And really, really got me worked up, because I'm thousands of miles away. And now I'm thinking to myself, I have this guy who is 100% depending on me to do something for him, to get him out of a foreign country that is about to implode. And if I don't, like, his life is in my hands. Like, he's going to die. He's going to get killed. And the Taliban had already started this process. Right. And so I'm trying to figure out different ways to do this. I'm calling my district representatives, state representatives, anybody I could reach out to. I'm calling their offices, and I keep getting the same canned responses. I think at this point we had seen one of the C-17s take off that had all the local nationals falling off of it. And I was like, oh, I think everybody realized this shit's real. This is bad. And so I was kind of in panic mode, but same canned responses from all these different offices. Hey, we know this is going on. We're doing everything we can. We have his name. I don't think anything was getting done. And so, I just got on social media and put out a post. I said, hey, if there's anybody that thinks they know someone that can help, then please reach out to me. Like we need to do something about this. And I think a lot of veterans of the Afghan war that were in a similar situation, we were all trying to do the same thing for either interpreters we'd worked with that were still there, Afghan commandos. We knew who was on the target list for the Taliban, and we knew who needed to get out and what was going to happen if we didn't. I was very fortunate that I have some friends that work in a lot of different kind of special places out in DC and other areas. And one of them was a buddy that I was stationed with out in Hawaii. We were lieutenants together out there. Very good friends, still to this day. And he had done a congressional fellowship up in DC and had some correspondence with a representative out of Florida named Mike Waltz. And he said, I think I could link you up with this guy and he may be able to help. What I didn't know had been going on in the background was there was a retired lieutenant colonel, his name's Scott Mann. He was I think he was a 7th Special Forces Group guy, who was in a very similar situation with one of his former Afghan commandos that he had worked with. And this guy, God bless him, because he was going through the same thing I think a lot of us were that had been involved in that conflict. And he decided that he just wasn't going to sit down and take it. And he essentially developed an underground railroad for commandos and local national Afghans that had some type of similar affiliation with us as a military, and devised this plan to smuggle people onto HKIA and potentially get them out. I mean, it was absolutely genius. There's actually a book about it. So this whole operation was called Pineapple Operation Express, or Operation Pineapple Express.
Okay.
So I got linked in with one of Mike Waltz's staffers who was working with Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann and an assortment of other people who were really running this whole underground operation, and kind of was the go-between for Khan and this group that were developing this smuggling route. And so I keep in mind at this time, Khan has a wife and 4 kids. And so I'm getting all their passport information, all their data, passing it off. But at the same time, getting these frantic texts, what's the plan? Should we go? Should we not go? Should we stay? And I'm like, yeah, you gotta stay, lay low, don't go outside, send other people out to get stuff for you. Right. They're wigging out. They're hiding out, just waiting for direction. And so the way, and I don't want to do this story injustice. I encourage people to go out there and look up Operation Pineapple Express. There's a ton of interviews with Colonel Mann. There's a book about it. Like I said, it was a huge, I can't believe it got pulled off, to be honest. But the 82nd Airborne had been sent over to close out HKIA and help with NEO operations. And to kind of make a long story short,
Nope, don't do that.
oh, okay, all right,
You
all
do
right,
not need to
all
make a
right,
long story short. You can make this as long as you want, dude. I want the details, man.
all right, all right. Um, so one of the companies there was led by a commander, Captain John Folta, and First Sergeant Jesse Kennedy. And somehow these guys had gotten in touch with the folks putting together Operation Pineapple Express, and they had found a little hole in the fencing to HKIA. And but unfortunately, it was next to this huge aqueduct that was, I want to say it was like knee high with just sludge and water and gunk. Um, at this time, the whole outside of the base is going nuts, right? Just local nationals swarming this place, trying to get out. And so I start getting directions. This is like 2 a.m. in the morning. Get a call like, "Hey, it's go time. Get Con up." And so I'm calling Con. Can't get a hold of him. Call his cousin who was living here in Austin. Cousin can't get a hold of him. Half hour goes by, and finally Con picks up. He's like, "Hey, sir, I'm ready. Sorry, I'm ready to go. let's get this thing going." And so there were specific directions to go to this location, and then this location was kind of a phased approach to get him to where he was going to be able to get entrance through that hole that was being monitored by the 82nd. And so the first place we sent him was to a local hotel, and we're basically playing the telephone game. And the way they referred it was, what they compared it to is essentially being like a shepherd, right? I was getting information on what the next steps were, and then I would pass it on to Con, and he would go. And there were a couple times we had a false start where I'd be like, "Hey, get ready, up, hold up." No, that's not going to work. And I think it was based on some of the intel they were getting about what Taliban was doing outside the perimeters. I think the Taliban knew that this underground railroad had been established, and they were doing everything they could to figure out where people were going, how they were getting in, because they knew that those people that were getting funneled through were the targets they were looking for. So if they could crack the code on that, they had easy access to the folks that they wanted to kill. And so finally we get the actual go. And so send him to this hotel, and give him the directions where to go. And he's hitting all the marks. And then I don't hear from him for a while. And maybe a couple hours pass by. It may have been even longer than that. And I finally get a text that says, "Hey, sir, I'm inside the base." I was like, "Oh, we did it. We finally did it." And it was maybe 20 minutes after he sent that text is when Abbey Gate got blown up and killed those 12 Marines amongst countless civilians. And that kind of shut everything down. I mean, he made it in by the skin of his teeth. Unfortunately, it was so chaotic that he kind of lost his family in the process. He couldn't get his family in. They had 4 very small children, and his wife, and they just couldn't make it through that aqueduct and through the chaos. So Con made his way out of there, got flown back to the United States. He is now a U.S. citizen residing in the great state of Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was pretty wild, man. It felt good to be able to do something in the face of watching that whole country implode, especially after we've been fighting there for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And it was hard to watch because in a sense you're questioning everything we did over there. Like, what was it for? Our buddies and our comrades, they got injured or killed over there. Like you're watching everything just pick up and leave after all that work, blood, sweat, and tears were put in. So being able to at least get Khan out was very important to me. I mean, and the other part of that too is because he was one of our battle buddies. Like I said, he went through all that entire experience with us, right? And we never leave a fallen comrade. And so it helped me a little bit kind of come to terms with that. And so we got him out, but yeah, I would say, you're always talking about greatest saves. That was probably one of my greatest saves. And with obviously a ton of assistance and legwork from other folks. But it's not over because his family is still over there in Afghanistan. Now that he's a naturalized citizen, been going through the process of trying to get his family over. Khan actually ended up returning to Afghanistan at one point because I was not on board with this, but I understand where he was coming from. His father got very ill and actually ended up passing away. But before he did, he wanted to go over and see him and pay his respects to his dad, which, that's something that's important in our culture, but right. in the Afghan culture, I mean, that is the patriarchy of the family.
Yeah, but you're running back into the lion's den with that one.
But that's the dude, I understand what he was why he had to go back and see his father before he passed. But now his wife is about to have a fifth child, I think, as a result of that trip. So unfortunately, we've kind of run into the same issue trying to get his family out. Things run at the speed of the government, and it's no hit on the State Department. I don't think that they have the staffing or the what's the best way to put it here? I don't think they ever anticipated having to do so many SIVs in such a short amount of time. Yeah. And they were caught way off guard. And so it's just been it's been a hell of a time trying to get the family back as well. Last time I talked to him, he said, right, we have to wait for the baby to be born before they can get everybody back. But part of the reason I want to come on this podcast is really for two reasons. One, if there's anybody that may know somebody that can help expedite this process and reunites this interpreter that spent years assisting our military in Afghanistan and reuniting him and his family. If you might know somebody that can help with that process and make it happen lickety split, then hopefully they could reach out to me on Instagram or email or something, and try to help with that. And two, he's Khan's an Uber driver in Austin. He's about to have his wife and 5 kids come live with him. It's going to be a little expensive, so I'm looking to raise funds to either help with their travel if that's needed, if it's not funded through the State Department, to get them back to the U.S., and two, just to help them get a place and be sustainable, and all set up for him and his kids. Yeah.
Man, you're a good man, Andy. That's pretty badass, dude.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's it's like I said, he was one of us. He may not have gone through the training and all that, but he was there with us. And a lot of these other interpreters were the same way. Yeah, and I think most of the interpreters that I've had have made it to the United States, and it's more than deserved. I think for these guys. But what was funny about this whole operation, Pineapple Express, is it was definitely themed off the movie Pineapple Express. There is a
Nice.
there's so part of the way to recognize them. So the way that the U.S. soldiers that were by that hole in the gate would know that this was one of the individuals that we were smuggling in was, one, they had like a little photo that they would hold up on their cell phone that had a picture of pineapples. And then there was a challenge and response code word. So typical infantry tactic, you're coming into a patrol base. In order for somebody to recognize you as a friendly, you say a certain word, and there's supposed to be a certain reply back to it. And for this operation, the code word was Seth and Rogan. So that kind of
That's fantastic.
that kind of topped it off. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I love it. That's what happens when you leave operation names in the hands of soft dudes.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Andy, I'm at a bit of a loss here, man, because a lot of times I can relate to so many things that we do in rescue. I have no relation to any of this. I've never been in combat. I've never dealt with what you've dealt with. And the fact that you're coming on here to not only tell this story, but to try to reconnect the family, that's amazing, man. And
thanks, man. Yeah.